Good morning. I am going to try to analyze the Victory Day conundrum that the Russians are building up to. And again, I haven't been on very often, and I'm probably not going to be on um, as frequently as I have been. But I will be back on more regularly as the summer goes along. Um, let's just go to the battlefield first in the Ukraine-Russian war, and Ukraine is doing very well. Not unexpectedly, the Russians have not figured out a coherent campaign strategy. They're attacking on a front of 300 plus miles, and they're doing it piecemeal. And Ukraine is entrenched and not likely to lose much critical ground. They will lose occasional villages, but that is a defense in depth strategy. They're luring the Russians in and then cutting them off as they did in Kiev. So it's not exactly that different from the battle strategies, tactics that the Ukrainians were employing during the Kiev phase of the war. Again, the Russians lack manpower. UK intelligence indicates that they've lost about 25% of their overall force and equipment. That is significant. The only way that Russia could replenish its force is to draw in reserves, issue an order for general mobilization. I don't think that's politically possible for Putin. It would indicate a significant setback in his supposed triumphant war narrative, so I don't think that's going to be likely. I think what's more likely to happen on May 9th, Victory Day, is that Putin will declare victory. And he'll say that they are consolidating the liberated areas and that they will move on in that sense. He will probably be bombastic in issuing empty threats to the West. He cannot use nuclear weapons. He probably cannot use chemical weapons, given the level of escalation that would just create. The West would, I think, ratchet up its involvement in Ukraine if he used chemical weapons, not to say anything about tactical nuclear weapons. Tactical nuclear weapons would be disastrous not only for Ukraine, but Russia itself. So I don't think that Putin is going to employ tactical nuclear weapons in the Ukraine theater. He is likely to threaten and imply. He knows that that tends to ratchet up the news cycle. The media tends to grab on that as if it were a real threat. I don't think it's a very likely threat. I think it's very, very distant. I think Putin knows that, and therefore he'll use it because he knows how it affects the news cycle in the West. He knows he's lost. The Russian military is an empty bag. They are incompetent. They have incredibly low morale. They don't have any command and control structure that is viable. They're losing warships to a nation that essentially doesn't have a navy, and they're being defeated on every front. They are causing damage, of course. They are destroying cities, but that's a kind of disastrous situation for anybody that has to be subject to it. But it is not an effective military strategy. I think they're losing around Kharkiv. They're likely to be driven back, and there are some supply lines that are likely to be cut off by the Ukrainians around the Kharkiv area and Belgorod. the Ukrainians are moving very close to being able to attack those lines of supplies effectively. And weapons are pouring in from the west. They're already there. The Russians, if they had wanted to preempt or intercept the supplies of weapons, they should have been bombing 70 days ago, not just now. They are essentially going to lose this war. Even in the central areas, they are allowed to take some villages, some territory, and extend their lines. The Russians can't really maintain their thrust 90 miles away from Russia. And therefore, they're going to be extended they're allowed to be extended in this defense in depth tactic that the Ukrainians have employed effectively, and then be successfully cut off. That's going to happen in the central area. And in Kherson, the Ukrainians are moving quite rapidly, taking back villages, and Kherson is going to eventually fall to the Ukrainians. What's more likely to happen is the Ukrainians, even though Putin, I think, will declare victory and will say that that's it, the war is over, again, issuing the traditional nuclear threat. But the Ukrainians are not going to stop. I think as time moves on, the Ukrainians will feel more confident, better armed, and will march against the areas that the Russians held before the February 24th invasion. I don't know if Crimea will fall, but Crimea is very vulnerable. That one bridge that it has with Russia should be knocked out fairly soon. And that's going to take quite a while to rebuild, since it's over water and subject to further Ukrainian attacks. Mariupol is still standing, so I don't think Mariupol is going to fall. I know you hear it every week that Mariupol is going to fall in the next few days, but that steel mill, the Azov Steel plant, is immense. And it was made to withstand a nuclear attack. So I think as the Russians try to invade that area, that space, they're going to be confronted with a tremendous challenge. And I think whatever units, we've heard that 12 BTGs, battalion tactical groups, are involved in that fight. I don't think those battalion tactical groups are going to be very effective going forward. I think that the fight is going to be taken out of them. It's already taken out of them. I think they've been treated to the extent that they don't represent an effective fighting force. So that once they actually go in there, and I wouldn't go in a large plant with those tunnels to kind of fight their way through them, they'll be demolished. So I think, Putin will declare victory on Victory Day, and again his grand vision of a restored Russian Empire, and that's what it is, because in 2005 he was given the cap of Monomac, the cap that was worn by Russian czars, given to them by the Byzantine emperor in the medieval period. He has a facsimile of that cap that was given to him. So this is a man who's driven by that narrative. I think he'll just create a narrative. And again, the Russians live in an alternative Orwellian world where reality doesn't really matter. They have a captive audience. But I do think that over time and the eventual victory of the Ukrainians and the mounting casualties that are likely to result, along with the economic bite of increasingly challenging sanctions from the West, particularly in oil and natural gas, and it seems that Germany's moving away from both oil and natural gas, and that's the key, Germany. I think Russia is going to seek out new leadership. I think within 18 months to 2 years, Putin will be gone. That was my prediction back a couple of months ago, and it still is. I don't think Putin can survive, even though he does control the narrative now. As more information comes in terms of the losses, as the economic bite of the sanctions grow, I think Putin will lose the approval of the elite, the Russian elite around him, and the Russian military, which some reports already indicate that he is losing. Um, I think eventually Putin will be retired. I don't think physically retired. That's not the way of the Russians, unless you're Paul the First. But something like Khrushchev after 1962. By 1964, he was removed. I've talked about that before, and retired to a comfortable dacha. I think that will be Putin's fate following this disastrous campaign. Again, let's see what Victory Day brings, but I think Putin will declare victory. I don't think escalation is possible. And even if escalation does take place, I think that the reality of the Russian military is such that he cannot add significantly to his forces anytime soon. And therefore, I think the more likely outcome on Victory Day is that he will declare victory and say the war is over. But that's not going to stop the Ukrainians. So I think eventually the Ukrainians will drive the Russians out of Ukraine. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe and just comment on my analysis if you agree or disagree. I appreciate the comments.